Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Steam clung to the walls of the cramped dormitory bathroom, mirroring the apprehension that clouded the young man's mind as he stood under the cascading shower on that significant day. Deep in contemplation, he immersed himself in the warm embrace of the water, his musings carrying him back to the precipice of a new academic journey. Within this secluded sanctuary, the mirror's misty canvas gradually yielded to a determined gesture, revealing a visage that might have appeared unremarkable to any passerby. This was 22-year-old Vance, a soul grappling with the complexities of self-identity since tender years. His facial features, soft and gentle, seemed to perpetually seek the elusive embrace of conventional masculine beauty, like a painter's brush forever shy of the ideal stroke. Blonde curls, damp and fleetingly outgrown, framed a face that, at this moment, became a confessional. It bore secrets, the whispered inquiries of one's truest self that had long awaited answers. Gripped by the solemnity of this moment, a whispered exhortation. First day, one step at a time. As the mist of self-reflection cleared, so did the bathroom's haze, fostering a transparency both within and without, a perfect prelude to the dawn of this novel chapter. The outfit felt like armor, unremarkable, designed not to draw attention. Eastlake University sprawled across 70 acres of meticulously maintained grounds. Gothic architecture blended with modern buildings as Vance navigated the campus map, searching for the gymnasium where freshman orientation activities would begin. Students streamed past in colorful clothes, laughing and reconnecting after summer break. Inside the gymnasium, tables lined the walls with club representatives eagerly recruiting new members. Vance shuffled between them, picking up flyers without making eye contact, shoulders hunched forward as if trying to take up less space. All incoming freshmen, please report to the main court for your orientation packet and schedule. A cheerful voice announced over the speaker system. Vance collected the packet and scanned the day's itinerary. First activity, team building exercises in the athletic center. The schedule indicated students should change into gym clothes in the locker rooms. The men's locker room bustled with activity, loud conversations, lockers slamming, the snap of towels. Vance chose a corner locker, as far from the center of activity as possible, and quickly changed into the required white t-shirt and navy athletic shorts. Hey, you're in my Physics 101 class, right? A tall student with dark hair extended his hand. I'm Blake. Saw your name on the roster when I was checking online. Yeah, that's me, Vance. The handshake was brief, uncomfortable. Blake nodded toward the gym.
These orientation things are always so forced, right? Let's just get through it.
The next hour passed in a blur of awkward icebreakers and team-building exercises. Vance participated half-heartedly, counting the minutes until lunch break. When the orientation leader finally dismissed them to change and head to the dining hall, relief washed over him. The locker room had emptied considerably as most students rushed to be first in the lunch line. Vance approached his locker, spinning the combination lock. But when the door swung open, his stomach dropped. The gym clothes and regular clothes were gone. In their place hung a neatly pressed navy blue pleated skirt, a crisp white blouse, and folded knee socks.
What the hell?
Vance looked around frantically. A few students remained at the far end of the room, but none seemed to be paying attention. Heart pounding, Vance checked nearby lockers, thinking there must have been a mix-up. Each was either empty or clearly belonged to someone else. Panic rose in his chest as he realized what had happened. Someone had pulled a prank, stealing his clothes and leaving these in their place. Vance returned to the locker and stared at the uniform. The white blouse seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights, the navy pleated skirt perfectly pressed with knife-edge pleats. The knee socks were folded precisely, waiting. Time ticked by. The remaining students left for lunch, leaving Vance alone with an impossible choice. Remain in sweaty gym clothes for the rest of the day, or wear the uniform. His fingers touched the fabric of the blouse. Soft cotton, cool against his skin. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he'd suppressed for years. In quiet moments alone, Vance had imagined what it might feel like to wear clothes like these, to express the part of himself that never felt right in masculine attire. The bathroom stall provided privacy as Vance changed, hands trembling. The blouse buttoned easily over his slim frame. The skirt settled at his waist, the hemline falling just above his knees. The socks pulled up to mid-calf completed the ensemble. Standing before the full-length mirror on the back of the bathroom door, Vance barely recognized himself. The uniform transformed him. His slender build and soft features suddenly made sense in this context. The person in the reflection looked right.
This was supposed to be humiliating,
Vance whispered to the mirror, smoothing the skirt with shaking hands.
So, why does it feel like coming home?
The most terrifying part remained. Leaving the locker room. The campus would be filled with students heading to afternoon orientation activities. Everyone would see. Vance gathered the gym clothes, stashed them in the emptied backpack, and stood at the locker room exit, hand frozen on the door handle. Through the small window, students passed by in the hallway, oblivious to the transformation happening just behind the door. One deep breath, then another. Vance pushed the door open and stepped into the hallway. The first few steps were the hardest. Each footfall seemed to echo unnaturally loud against the tiled floor. The feeling of the skirt swishing against bare legs was foreign but not unpleasant. A group of students passed, conversations faltering as they noticed Vance. "Nice outfit, dude," one called out with a snicker. Vance's face burned, but something unexpected happened. Rather than shrinking away, his spine straightened. Each step became more confident than the last. The weight that had pressed on his shoulders for years, the weight of pretending, began to lift. The campus quad stretched before him, the shortest route to the dining hall. Crossing it meant maximum exposure, but the alternative was skulking along building edges and hiding. Something inside rebelled against hiding anymore. Halfway across the quad, a group of sophomores lounging on the grass noticed Vance. "Hey, what's with the uniform? Lost a bet?" One called out, earning laughs from his friends. Vance paused, considering how to respond. The truth was complicated, but in that moment, an unexpected clarity emerged.
"It feels right,"
Vance replied simply, continuing forward. The dining hall doors loomed ahead. Inside would be hundreds of fellow students, all potential witnesses to this moment that had begun as a prank, but was transforming into something far more significant. Just as Vance reached for the door handle, a voice called out from behind. "Hey, wait up!" A student with short auburn hair and round glasses jogged up, slightly out of breath.
"I'm Riley, from the orientation group. That uniform, is that from the theater department? Are you in the fall production?" "No, it's complicated,"
Vance replied, suddenly aware of how the sunlight felt warm against bare legs. Riley smiled. "Well, whatever the reason, you're rocking it. The dining hall can be overwhelming on orientation day. Want to grab a table together?" That simple act of kindness broke something open inside Vance. "I'd like that. I'm Vance, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Vance," Riley said, pulling open the door. "After you." The dining hall conversation flowed more easily than any Vance could remember. Riley, a sophomore psychology major, asked questions about Vance's interests and background without a single mention of the uniform. It was the first time in years Vance felt seen as a person rather than a collection of expectations. "So, what's your major?" Riley asked, pushing aside an empty plate. "Computer science for now, but I'm not sure it's right for me," Vance admitted. "The beauty of freshman year is you don't have to be sure about anything," Riley replied. "It's all about figuring out who you are." Those words resonated deeply as Vance adjusted the blouse collar. "I think I might be starting that process today." Riley's smile was warm with understanding. For what it's worth, sometimes the universe has strange ways of helping us find ourselves. Whatever led to this, Riley gestured to the uniform. Maybe it's the universe giving you a little push. The afternoon orientation sessions became a blur of introductions and campus tours. Some students stared or whispered, but others, like Riley, simply accepted Vance's presence without question. By the time the day ended and Vance returned to the dorm room, something had shifted fundamentally. Alone in the room, Vance stood before the mirror again, studying the reflection. The uniform that had been meant as a humiliation had instead become a revelation. For the first time, the person in the mirror looked like who Vance had always felt inside. That night, unable to sleep, Vance opened the laptop and began researching. Terms like gender identity and transgender filled the screen. Each article, each personal story, resonated with experiences Vance had felt but never had words to describe. Dawn broke with a decision. Vance would no longer hide. The next morning, a different uniform hung in the closet. Not the result of a prank, but a deliberate choice. The navy pleated skirt, a new white blouse purchased online with express shipping, and knee socks were laid out carefully on the bed. The campus that day witnessed not Vance being humiliated, but Vance beginning a journey toward authenticity. Some students laughed or made comments, but others offered smiles of support or simple nods of acknowledgement. Riley became a steadfast friend, introducing Vance to other students who were part of campus LGBTQ+ groups and helping navigate the administrative processes for updating preferred names in the university system. 2 weeks after orientation, Vance sat across from a university counselor, hands clasped tightly in lap.
"I've felt this way for as long as I can remember,"
Vance explained, voice steady despite the racing heart.
"Being in those clothes that day, it was like finally seeing myself clearly.
I want to be known as Clara now." The counselor nodded, making notes. "Clara, that's a beautiful name. The university has protocols in place to support students through transition. We can update your preferred name in the system immediately, and I can connect you with resources both on and off campus." Clara left the office with a folder of information and a lightness she'd never experienced before. The name felt right on her tongue, in her mind. Clara. Finally, the person inside matched the name the world would call her. The following months brought changes both subtle and profound. Clara began hormone therapy under the guidance of medical professionals. Her blonde hair, once kept short to conform to expectations, was allowed to grow, framing her face in soft waves that accentuated features that had always leaned feminine. Shopping became an exploration of identity. Clara discovered a love for vintage-inspired fashion, colorful midi dresses that swirled around her legs as she walked across campus, cardigan sweaters in soft pastels that contrasted with the changing autumn leaves, and most particularly, vintage brooches that added unique character to every outfit. Her first brooch, a delicate silver owl with tiny crystal eyes, was a gift from Riley to celebrate Clara's first month living authentically. Soon, the collection grew. A bouquet of enameled flowers for completing her first semester as Clara, a Art Deco-inspired geometric piece found at a local antique store. Each brooch became a tiny monument to her journey. Winter arrived with swirling snow and final exams. Clara, wrapped in a burgundy coat with her favorite crystal snowflake brooch pinned at the collar, crossed the campus with confidence that would have been unimaginable to Vance just months earlier. "Clara, wait up!" Riley called, hurrying across the quad. "How was your computer science final?" Clara adjusted her cream-colored scarf against the cold. "Actually, I've decided to switch majors. I'm going into fashion design with a minor in business." Riley grinned. "That makes perfect sense. Your style is already legendary on campus." They walked together toward the campus coffee shop, their boots leaving parallel tracks in the fresh snow. "I got an email from the dean's office this morning," Clara said, as they found a table near the window. "They've approved my official name change in the university records. Starting next semester, all my professors will have Clara Mercer on their rosters." Riley reached across to squeeze her hand. "That's fantastic! We should celebrate." "I already know how," Clara replied with a smile. "There's a vintage clothing fair downtown this weekend. I've had my eye on a particular 1950s brooch, silver filigree with small pearls. It would be perfect for the spring semester." "Count me in," Riley laughed. "Though at the rate you're collecting those brooches, you'll need a special display case soon." Clara touched the snowflake brooch at her collar. "Each one tells part of my story. This journey hasn't been easy, but it's been mine." Indeed, the journey had included difficult conversations with family, her mother's initial confusion giving way to cautious support, her father's longer struggle toward understanding. There had been lost friends who couldn't accept her transition, and new friends who valued her authentic self. There had been hurtful comments from strangers and unexpected kindnesses from people she barely knew. Through it all, Clara had continued moving forward, each day more comfortable in her skin than the day before. Spring semester brought new classes and new challenges. Clara's fashion design courses introduced her to techniques for creating garments that both expressed personality and flattered different body types. Her knowledge became practical as she learned to modify commercially available clothes to better suit her changing body or to create pieces from scratch that aligned with her personal aesthetic. One Tuesday in March, Clara sat sketching in the university coffee shop, a pale pink dress with elbow-length sleeves and a knee-length pleated skirt complemented by her favorite owl brooch. Lost in concentration over her design portfolio, she didn't notice someone approaching until they cleared their throat.
"Excuse me,"
a deep voice said. Clara looked up to find a tall young man with an uncomfortable expression, shifting his weight from foot to foot. It took a moment to recognize him. Blake from Physics 101, the class she'd dropped when changing majors. "Hi, Blake," she said, closing her sketchbook. "I almost didn't recognize you," he said, gesturing vaguely at her appearance. "I heard about your change." Clara waited, unsure where this conversation was heading. Blake took a deep breath. "Look, I need to apologize. The prank with the uniform during orientation, that was me and some guys from the dorm. We thought it would be funny, but..." He trailed off, looking genuinely remorseful. Clara blinked in surprise. The origin of the prank had remained a mystery she'd eventually stopped trying to solve. focusing instead on moving forward. "It wasn't funny," she said finally. "It was meant to humiliate me." "I know that now, and I'm truly sorry," Blake replied. "I never expected," he gestured at her again, "that it would help me find myself." Clara finished for him. "Neither did I. But sometimes the worst intentions can lead to the best outcomes." Blake nodded slowly. "You seem happy now, much more than when I met Vance." "I am happy," Clara confirmed. "And Vance doesn't exist anymore. Just Clara." After an awkward pause, Blake spoke again. "For what it's worth, I'm glad something good came from our stupidity. You've got more courage than any of us who planned that prank." As Blake walked away, Clara reopened her sketchbook, running her fingers over the designs she'd created. A collection inspired by transformation and emergence. The prank that had been meant to shame her had instead become the catalyst for embracing her true self. By the end of freshman year, Clara had established herself as one of the most stylish students on campus. Her colorful, vintage-inspired outfits and ever-growing brooch collection became her signature. Professors who'd known her briefly as Vance now addressed her confidently as Clara, and new acquaintances never knew she had been anyone else. The final day of classes found Clara in a butter-yellow dress with a sweetheart neckline and full skirt that swished pleasingly as she walked. A delicate brooch in the shape of a butterfly with mother-of-pearl wings adorned the collar. Her blonde hair, now grown to her shoulders, was styled in soft waves that framed her face, accentuating the subtle changes that hormone therapy had begun to create. Riley waited on a bench outside the fashion design building, holding 2 cups of coffee. "To surviving freshman year," Riley said, handing one to Clara. "To finding myself," Clara replied, clinking her cup against Riley's. They walked together across the campus that had witnessed Clara's transformation from a hesitant person hiding behind gray t-shirts to a confident young woman expressing herself through colorful fashion. "Any plans for summer break?" Riley asked. Clara nodded. "I'm doing an internship with a costume designer in the city, and I'm finally going home to see my parents as Clara. Mom's been supportive on our video calls, but Dad's still adjusting. It's time for them to meet their daughter in person." "That takes courage," Riley said. Clara touched the butterfly brooch at her collar. "A year ago, I couldn't have imagined having this kind of courage. But now, I can't imagine living any other way." They reached the center of the quad, where students relaxed on the grass, celebrating the end of finals. Clara recognized a few faces from orientation day, people who had stared or whispered when she'd first crossed this space in the Navy uniform. Now, several of them waved or called greetings. The campus had watched her transformation and, in large part, accepted it. There were still occasional comments or looks, but Clara had learned to focus on those who supported her rather than those who didn't understand. "You know," Riley said, following Clara's gaze across the quad, "when I saw you that first day in the uniform, I thought you were the bravest person I'd ever met. Turns out, I was right." Clara smiled, remembering the terror she'd felt standing at the locker room door, contemplating that first step. "I didn't feel brave. I felt like I had no choice." "That's what real courage is," Riley replied.
"Doing what you must, even when you're afraid."
As the sun warmed the campus and students celebrated around them, Clara reflected on the journey that had begun with a cruel prank and led to authentic life. The Navy uniform that had been meant as humiliation had instead been the first step toward becoming herself. In her dorm room that evening, Clara carefully packed her belongings for summer break. Her collection of brooches went into a special velvet-lined case, each one a milestone in her journey. The butterfly for the day she legally changed her name, the silver filigree heart for her first date as Clara with a graduate student from the art history department, the vintage cameo that had been a Christmas gift from her mother, the first acknowledgement that her family was beginning to accept her transition. Among her carefully folded dresses and skirts, Clara paused, reaching to the back of the closet where a navy blue pleated skirt and white blouse hung, carefully preserved. She ran her fingers over the fabric, remembering the fear and exhilaration of that first day. These simple garments had changed the course of her life. Clara packed them carefully between layers of tissue paper. She would keep them always, not as a reminder of a prank or humiliation, but as a monument to transformation, to becoming Clara. The summer internship in the city introduced Clara to a community of designers and artists who appreciated her aesthetic and encouraged her developing skills. Working with the costume designer, she learned techniques for creating garments that told stories about the characters who wore them, knowledge she applied to her own wardrobe as she continued to construct her identity through fashion. Weekend visits home proved both challenging and healing. Her mother made efforts to use the right name and pronouns, though occasional slips occurred. Her father, initially stiff and uncomfortable, gradually softened as he witnessed his child's confidence and happiness. The pivotal moment came when he noticed Clara wearing a brooch shaped like a small sailboat, a replica of the one he'd sailed during his college years. "I remember telling you stories about that boat when you were little," he said, voice thick with emotion. "They were my favorite bedtime stories," Clara replied softly. "I found this brooch in an antique store and thought of you." He cleared his throat. "You seem at peace now, in a way you never were before." "I am, Dad. I'm finally myself." That night, he used Clara for the first time without hesitation. Returning to campus for sophomore year, Clara moved into an apartment with Riley and 2 other friends. Her closet expanded to accommodate an ever-growing collection of vintage-inspired dresses, cardigans in every color, and skirts that swirled dramatically when she walked across campus. The brooch collection required its own special display case, each piece carefully arranged to tell the story of her journey. In her fashion design classes, Clara's distinctive aesthetic earned recognition from professors who praised her ability to blend vintage silhouettes with contemporary details. Her business courses gave her the foundation to imagine someday launching her own line of clothing designed specifically for transgender women like herself, garments that would help others in their journeys toward authenticity. On the anniversary of Orientation Day, Clara stood in front of her mirror, dressed in a navy blue pleated skirt and white blouse that echoed the uniform from that fateful day. Her blonde hair, now falling past her shoulders in soft waves, framed a face that hormone therapy had subtly feminized. At her collar, she pinned a new brooch, a silver phoenix with wings outspread, rising from flames crafted of tiny rubies. Riley appeared in the doorway. "Perfect symbolism," she said, noting the phoenix. "Rising from the ashes of who you were to become who you are." Clara smiled at her reflection. 1 year ago today, I took the first step toward becoming myself. I never could have imagined where that path would lead. "And where does it lead next?" Riley asked. Clara touched the phoenix brooch. "Forward. Always forward." Together, they walked across the campus that had witnessed Clara's transformation, the pleated skirt swishing against her legs just as it had that first day. But now, each step was taken with confidence rather than fear, each movement an expression of authenticity rather than a desperate attempt to survive. The prank that had been meant to humiliate had instead liberated. The uniform that should have been a costume had revealed her true self. The journey that began in fear continued in strength. Clara Mercer, in her navy blue pleated skirt and white blouse, with her blonde hair catching the sunlight and the phoenix brooch gleaming at her collar, walked across the campus as herself, completely, authentically, finally herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!